All right, we are live. Welcome back to another episode of the relationship series. My name is Gina Spataro, and this is my brother, Sam Spataro, always talking about the matters of the heart and mind. Before we begin, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to help support our channel's growth, and possibly just to share it with someone who is needing the same information or seeking information that you know might help them during a certain situation. Sam, how's your week been?
My week is splendid here in Northern Ontario.
Splendid.
We obviously were shut down for a couple of days because of the snow. But no, other than that, things are pretty good. How about you?
Excellent. I can't complain, honestly. Like, even today, yes, with the snow, but it was so beautiful outside. It really was.
Oh, it was so nice.
It was really nice outside. Yeah. So, I mean, there's the pros and cons to the messiness and the roads, but there is some beauty to it, which I'm trying to gain that perspective a little bit more each year, right? If I'm going to live here, I better.
What are you hinting towards?
What do you mean? What am I hinting towards?
If I'm going to live here, I might as well like it.
I've always had thoughts about not being a permanent resident here throughout the whole year. Like, I love where I live, but I also love sunshine permanently. So you never know. There's always something. Right? But all right. So tonight's topic is basically the second wave of what we're going through and how it's affecting relationships during lockdown. I mean, we are not completely on a lockdown yet. However, there are enhanced restrictions weekly. They kind of like renege on the restrictions and they enforce them again, and vice versa. So there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of opinions out there. There's a lot of chatter. So what is the deal? Right. So the first thing to discuss during the relationship lockdown, and I know this is your forte, Sam. So finances. I was listening to the radio the other day, and there is going to be, they're predicting an increase of foreclosures on homes at this moment. And for me, it's like, where are these families going to live? Are they going to be moving back into homes with parents? Are they going to be, those communal homes where it's like they have multiple families, but residences are not built that way nowadays to hold that many people in one home, right? They're single family dwellings or, small family dwellings for sure. So where are these people going to go? What are they going to experience during this foreclosure crisis? Because yes, in a lot of metropolitan areas, the rates have obviously decreased. People are tending to move out of those areas right now, whereas the smaller communities are getting hit with a lot more of these major city folk moving into them, right? So properties have increased. So what is your prediction, Sam, on, families' finances during crises like this?
Just give me a second.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. If you're watching, just take a deep breath in, because there's definitely a lot going on. I think, when there's times like this, it really shows where the cracks are in the relationships, especially when it comes to finances. It's easy to make things look like they're great when times are good. And because we are in such a debt-induced economy, and I don't really want to get into the history about how, it kind of works and everything, but to keep it kind of dumbed down and simple so people can understand. As a lot of people that taught me over the years have helped me to understand with ease, is that we are in a debt-based system.
Right.
So which means, everything looks good and great on the outside for the majority of people, as long as times are good.
Right.
So the coins flip to the other side. we, for the past 8 months to a year, have been experiencing a little bit of hardships. And what happened right away with the lockdowns and the closures with the coronavirus was they injected a lot of money into the system. They dropped interest rates, they pumped liquidity in, they created CERB payments here in Ontario, which is basically, you know, similar to like unemployment payments for businesses and individuals. And as that's kind of, you know, faded its way out, you know, here we are, we're in the fall now, and what seemed to be kind of, you know, things were starting to look optimistic come the end of the summertime. We're now headed back into lockdowns again, higher cases, which is resulting in, you know, greater measures and restraints on businesses, which is going to affect people individually, which will then ultimately have an impact on people's home lives.
Right.
So families, individuals, whoever you are out there, and how it's impacting you. And so the juice is gone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the can is empty, and now you don't know what to do. Right. Because what seemed like what was going to be short term, and maybe you're using your savings to get you through, maybe the CERB payments were helping you get through. I know here in Ontario, the government was offering business loans where you only need to pay so much back at a time, but now we're being locked down again.
Right.
So it's putting a lot of restraint on business, which is going to affect individuals because those people have employees. And now here we are in the forefront of lockdown 2.0, which for me, if it has a long-term effect, you're going to start to see a different type of thing happen. Okay. You know, the first thing it was, we were closed down for a little bit, you know, but we were going to go back. So maybe we ate up a little bit of savings and, you know, but there was hope. There was faith that things were going to get going again. But here we are with the second round of lockdowns, and now people are faced with that inevitable side, which is we have no more savings. Mm-hmm. The punch bowl is ended. What are we going to do? And as you're seeing in the headlines, people are losing their businesses. A lot of people that were allowed to have not delays, but able to put off their mortgage payments, well, now they're starting to come ahead with mounting debts on all other fronts with lines of credit. And now they're going to be forced to make hard decisions, which is, you know, do we cut back? Can we afford to stay where we are? Do we lose our home? Do we lose our business? What do we do? And I've already know a few people that it's impacting their business that may never open up again, individuals that might lose their homes. And so the question is, what do you do?
Yeah.
I think what you do is, in any situation, your greatest offense is always to have a strong defense. And, you know, especially when it comes to relationships, you know, today, because we're so by nature, you know, connected to credit, that it's no longer there. You know, you kind of have that inevitable conversation with the partner that you're going to need to have about where do we go from here. You're going to need to have those conversations about what do we need to cut back on? What are the essentials? We're going to need to start budgeting. We're going to have to get an Excel sheet or a Mint platform that scans all our spending, what our income is in. You're going to start having to be creative. We had a friend who was part of a company for 18 years who just recently got let go in the pharmaceutical industry, of all places in a pandemic, a pharmaceutical industry. But he got laid off among other people. And so, you know, with the mounting uncertainty, what's going on with the lockdowns and the virus and the vaccines, and now mounting business losses, job losses, and like you said, it's going to affect people's homes and life. What do you do? So I think some simple strategies are you really need to have those conversations that kind of should have happened when things were good, because, you know, you always have to plan that if the bad is going to happen, was I prepared already? So it doesn't have that big of an impact on me. And so here you are. Maybe you didn't do that. So what you need to do is you have to sit down by yourself or with your partner and say, okay, what are the things that we're willing to give up that aren't necessities? Mm-hmm. And what are the things that are that we can't get away with, those fixed expenses? And can we afford, based on where we are today, to keep going? Mm-hmm. You know, and it's unfortunate. Some people are going to have to make those decisions where maybe they need to sell their home, get into a cheaper apartment. Maybe they might have to move back home, or whatever the situation might be. Because I personally believe, this round coming up is where you're going to start seeing the economic impact on a much broader scale.
I agree.
Because we're 8-9 months in. I know even for me, when I shut down, I wasn't really working as much. I built up some reserves in the business, obviously savings at home, and, luckily things picked up again. Right. Yeah. So here we are again with the possible lockdown. Now, what will that look like?
Yeah.
I do know there's some major investors right now who are betting against major bankruptcies right now in the economies.
Wow.
So going into that and knowing these things, some things that I would do is you have to have those hard conversations. Yeah. You need to sit down, write down what your fixed expenses are, what the things are, start eating at home, stop eating out. And maybe you're going to need to start looking at alternatives to create income. We are in what's called the intertechnological area from the year 2020 to 30. And the prediction is that 50% of traditional jobs are going to be wiped off the face of this planet.
Wow.
It sounds very dire, and it is, because there's a lot of people that it's going to affect and impact, and I have a lot of empathy and compassion for those that will go through that. However, in this same time period, it presents the greatest opportunity
100%.
Because there are a lot of people, like one of my partners who has a channel that he started on YouTube 6 months ago that will soon be monetized just by exuberating his passions.
Yeah.
And so what this also will do, like it's doing with our friend that lost his job after 18 years, is he's now looking into pursuing his passion that he went to school for.
Good.
So one, when it comes to finances, sit down, have those hard conversations and write down what the fixed expenses are, what the things are you can cut out. And then number two, you have to figure out a way that if you're in a relationship, you're in this together. There's no blaming, there's no shaming. It's how can we grow from this as a team? Because that's why you got into the relationship, through good and bad. Remember that marriage whole spew that you said when you said your I do's? So prove it now, prove those things now when times are hard, because these are the things that will carry you out of this.
100%. And moving into the next one, you touched upon some good points already, but they are predicting, and they are seeing already a 38% increase in divorces post-COVID, right? So where's the tolerance with one another during this time, right? What are you learning about your partner? What are you not able to accept? What are you not willing to work together on during a time of need? Being in close, and the funny thing is, this is the time when people are actually getting to know one another, right? A lot of the times they've spent so much time apart, whether it be with work or, having a social life or etc. A lot of relationships haven't been in close proximity for a certain amount of time like they have now. So what do you think that they're learning about one another that's creating this divide within their relationship per se?
Well, I think there's a couple things. Definitely lawyers are busy right now.
Yeah.
Right. So, and the question is why? And you touched on a very good point right in the beginning. Finances, money is the biggest contributor to relationships ending when times are hard. And so, the real question is, since we're talking about money and marriage and now how, it's hard times and there's a lot of divorce and relationship problems that are coming, but it's derived from money's the main component. Now, my question to you, is it money or is it something else that is driving this? Because, at the core of things, when things are bad, there are those, very few, not a lot, that find a way to strengthen their marriage in this time. 100%. But let's use the average as the basis. That's not going to happen.
Right.
So my question to you is what can you help people to understand puts them in that situation?
Yeah. Well, I think it's just an accumulation of things too, right? I think people's tolerance for one another is a lot lower than it was. If you're seeing your partner maybe go through some mental health issues and you don't know how to cope with it, or if you feel that, a lot of the times too, and this is what I know to be true because I've heard stories over the past months about relationships, and unfortunately, fortunately, I was coaching, this lady through her trials and tribulations, and yeah, I think truthfully, she really got to know her husband through all of this, and there's qualities that she wasn't willing to accept. Instead of making it their project, it was like, let's wash our hands of what we created, right? So yes, I think it is finances that is a huge indicator for a lot of the divides in relationships. However, I think it is people's very quick reaction to exit then fix something. The tolerance for one another is very low, especially with, relationships nowadays. People don't know how to work on certain things and how to get through them. It's a very fight or flight mentality. And I think a lot of people are choosing the flight option personally. I don't know if you have any other opinions on that, but that's what I see. So it really does create a lot of stress for a lot of relationships, especially if there's children. It's like, who's pulling whose weight, who's helping, who's being lazy, who's, not showing dominance or strength or femininity within the relationships, who's turning on their masculine and feminine frames, etc. It all has a part in it. And if you're unaware of how to deal with it or work through or trudge through, the easy route is call somebody up, help me with this. Okay, that's what I have to do. Let's sign the papers. So 38% is a huge increase over a certain span of time. It's a huge increase. So what do you think the triggers are? Yes, you think it's finances, but it must be more than that. I think mental health has to be a huge indicator as to why relationships are also on the out.
So here's my question, and answer this truthfully.
Yeah.
If we can go back 40 years with the same situation we're in today, do you think that percentage would be as high?
No.
Why? Because I think, so what I want you to understand here, when you answer this, there's the reason why it's so high today.
Yeah.
That is what has changed.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Right? So you said, no, I think it would be lower. So the question is, why do you think that?
Well, I think that the state has made it very easy for people to push that button. I think it's more of an option than not. I think it's actually, pushed more than not. And for a lot of reasons. I mean, finances, oh my gosh, it's a huge industry, right? It's a huge industry. And also, like you said, 40 years ago, traditionalism existed 40 years ago. The nuclear family existed 40 years ago.
No, elaborate on that. Nuclear family, for those that don't understand.
Oh, where in the home there was the traditional mother, father, children. And now you have a lot of blended families. Those stresses are added on top of that, right? And so don't forget, a lot of blended families, the ratio for them succeeding is a lot less as well, right? So when you put them in another extreme environment with a pandemic, yeah, it's going to heighten that chance of divorce as well, right? So I think I feel like I say this every, time we talk, but the entitlement to owning something or something is owed to you mentality still lives in relationships where it's like, they're not doing this for me. They're not serving this, need for me or want specifically. And out is very easy for people. The fact that people think people are very replaceable is very heightened nowadays. Very, very heightened.
So the question is why? Because that's the answer.
Yeah, the question is why. I mean, I can't speak for people because
in your opinion,
I've never been in their shoes. I've never been.
No, but in your opinion,
In my opinion, I think that there's more advantage for certain genders to exit a relationship than not, to be quite honest. And it wasn't like that 40 years ago. It was not. People know that they will be ahead if they choose this route. So, I mean, an option is an option. And if you feel like there's no crash on your end, then it's so much easier to make that decision, right? The people who choose this will be okay for the most part. And it's very easy to go that route if I'm speaking in between the lines without causing a rift amongst genders or etc. What is your opinion? Why do you think?
So in my opinion, I believe it's dependence versus independence. So if we can go back, 30, 40 years, the relationship dynamics were completely different.
Right.
In my opinion, women were a lot more dependent on the man when it came to, providing for the family. They were more reliant, and it was still sort of, that traditional dynamic where, if you go back to the caveman days where the man was out hunting and the woman was, back at the home, gathering and taking care of the children. And he came back and, they shared their, their rewards for the day's effort. And that kind of translate to what relationships used to be in our parents and our grandparents' relationships, which is why the divorce rate was so low. Yeah. Because females were a lot more dependent on men and reliant on them.
Yeah.
Well, today, we need to call a spade a spade. If you're watching this video and you don't think this is true and you have a different opinion, I'd love to see in the comment section. But the difference today is that both people are independent.
Right, 100%.
Right? Both people are independent. But when it comes to females in relationships where you used to be dependent on us and today you don't, it's easier to monkey branch away.
Right.
Okay. So where, women used to contemplate, think twice because of your brain and the way it's wired to go through that process. Well, today that process doesn't need to exist anymore.
Right. 100%.
Right. That process is, there's cracks. I don't like it. I know I can move on to something better.
Right.
Or that I can move on and there won't be any shaming, any ridicule about how many times I'm married or how many people I'm with, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that part has changed.
Yeah.
Right. In the context of where, when it comes to the divorce rate being higher, well, let's face it, that's the reason why.
100%. Yeah.
Right. So that is the main reason. The dynamics and fundamentals of relationships have changed.
The knowledge of marriage.
Both people are now independent. Maybe it's 60-40, 50-50 now. Maybe it's still more higher on the male side.
Yeah.
But if you go back 40 years,
yeah,
it was probably 70-30, 80-20. It was nowhere where it was today.
100%.
Right. So when it comes to marriages and you see there's trying times right now and, divorce is on the rise, well, it's pretty obvious why. Yeah. And it's pretty logical as to we can explain, if you just look at the way things are today. Hey, if you're not happy in the relationship or the marriage, or, this is your opportunity to really evaluate, who the person is you married in a hard time and they don't possess those qualities that you are reliant on them to have in a time of, let's face it, you really show who you are, not when things are going good, but when things are hard. And if they don't have those qualities, then, hey, that's your decision.
Yeah.
And whatever your decision is 100% right for you. And everybody should accept that. But that is the reason why.
Yeah.
That is the reason why. And it shouldn't be an excuse, to do that. My strategy or tip that I would share with you is, it didn't just lead to this. Right. There's probably small pressure cracks of things that have led up that you've tolerated over time. But now that you're presented with everything all at once and other things mounting, you're ready to flee.
Yeah.
So I get that. I totally understand. But it's not your only out.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I mean, that's also indicative of why people are not choosing to get married, right? Because it's that whole, well, what's the point? Like the security and the provisioning and et cetera. It's like women are like, I can do it for myself. Right. So it's taking longer because they're actually trying to get more of an emotional connection with someone than they are choosing to, find security in that respect. Right. So yeah, I completely 100% agree with you.
Yeah. And I do want to share one thing on this.
Sure.
If you are in a type of relationship where you are both, equal in finances, equal in, dividing everything up, it shouldn't just be put to one person at the other in the situation. You should both equally take responsibility for where you are and the problems that exist and deal with them accordingly. Yeah. There should be no shaming, blaming, or guilting. If you both are in a relationship of equality, then that's the way the game should be played.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So next, the vaccine. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, I have my thoughts. I'm not against vaccines by any means. They serve a purpose. Excuse me. However, am I into having something new that hasn't been tested for very long in my system? No, I'm not. Do I think that it's going to be a standard if you want to go ahead and live your life a certain way, like travel, et cetera? Yeah, I think that, it's going to be something that people are going to be forced to have, to be quite honest. And the power is there for the government to do that. What are your thoughts on the vaccine? That is up and coming, that there's trials, and there's the one that's the twin vaccine and the single, and,
Okay. I'm going to try to navigate this as safely as possible.
Yeah, truthfully, right?
Right. So first and foremost, I'm no expert at this. This is strictly my opinions and my thoughts, and everyone is entitled to their own opinion and thought that's watching this. I'm not a doctor. I'm not connected to anybody who's giving me any inside information. This is just how I feel about it. And I have that right to share.
Right.
Considering we live in a free democratic society where people have fought. I actually watched today Saving Private Ryan with my eldest son, and our friend George came by, and I was explaining to them that it's a shame that, today in Canada and the US, that so many people bitch and complain about living here and how unequal it is and how unjust this is. These people laid their life on the line to die for our very freedoms.
Yeah.
And we're literally watching, especially with everything that's been going on, it just kind of being faded away. And we really need to be very careful, in my opinion, where we are. And so how does this translate into the vaccine? In my opinion, my personal opinion, it should come with choice. Mm-hmm. As to whether you want it or not. And it should not also come with restrictions.
Right.
And here's what I mean by that. We should have the choice whether we want to take it or we don't want to take it.
Right. And
if you choose not to take it, there's a few things that shouldn't happen that I think are going to happen. And I'm actually was talking to some people about this months ago. I'm not even sure if I talked to you about it, where my belief based on what's going on today is that, the vaccine's being rolled out and it's, starting to be, delivered to people so they can start taking it, is that if you refuse to take this vaccine, it's going to impeach on your very civil liberties. Mm-hmm. You won't be allowed to travel. You won't be allowed to go in public places. Maybe your children won't be allowed to go to school. There's going to be a whole bunch of things. I actually heard a plane company that is now saying that I think I have that article. Maybe I'll share it later. But that they're basically not going to allow anyone to go on their planes who was not vaccinated. And there's actually going to be bracelets that are, going to tell you if you've been vaccinated or not vaccinated. Like, those are my opinions. And if that is the world that we live in, like, what is this?
Yeah.
Like, what is this? And I already know, based on what's been going on, that the media will start to shame those people. They will start to call them bad people, that they're going to kill people, that, they're selfish. And then all the people who are on the other side that, believe in the vaccine, whether they're family, friends, coworkers, I can already see how they're going to be treated.
Right.
So that's the part that I'm kind of unease with, if that even happens. Yeah. Maybe it doesn't. And these thoughts and opinions and beliefs that I have that what could be, maybe will come to fruition, and that's fantastic. I hope it doesn't. But I don't know. I'm not very educated in vaccines. I personally don't think I'm going to take it.
Yeah.
If I see, here's what I think should happen. For those of you who are leaders in the world, if you want your countries to take the vaccine, here's what I think you need to do. You need to go to the TV screen with your kids and your wife and all your family and all your friends and all your political allies, and roll up your sleeve and show on TV that you're getting the vaccine too.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay? Mm-hmm. Lead by example, because there's a lot of people that have a lot of fear. There's a lot of people right now that have a lot of uncertainty because, from what I understand, vaccines just don't get rolled out in a year.
No.
They take 5 to 10 years. Not only to develop the vaccine, but to see what the long-term effects are on the people that are going to be taking it. I'm not an expert, and I'm skeptical because I have 3 lives that I need to be responsible for to explain to them 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years down the road that this thing that, daddy said, go ahead and take because the government said it was safe. And all of a sudden they're having side effects that could have long-term side effects that might not be appropriate. I'm not saying that is going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. But however, we have the right to question. We have the right to get these answers.
Yeah.
Right. And I think this is where it's very hokey pokey.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's being rolled out. There's still a lack of clarity. There's still a whole whack of uncertainty. And I think what really needs to happen here is lead by example. Yeah. Tell us what you're going to do personally, what you're going to do with your family, what you are going to do with your friends. And then at ease, the people will naturally want to follow you. You must lead by example with clarity and reason and logic. This whole thing has been nothing but a piece of confusion.
Yeah.
Right from the get-go.
Yeah.
Right. And, there's a lot of information out there today about this virus that kind of makes me question whether or not we should be taking it or not. Is it, and so that's what I think really needs to happen. That might make me want to take it and then say, you know what, I'm confident that my kids can take it and I'm not worried about what the future holds,
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? So there's so much around, things going back to normal. People just want to feel normalcy immediately. They want instant gratification on knowing that things will be back to the way we once knew. In my head, it's going to take some time, and you have to wrap your head around what are you going to do in order to get through this temporary moment. I don't think it's going to be forever. There's always light at the end of the tunnel. But I don't know how long it's going to take. And like you said, we need people to lead by example that are influencing our decisions at this moment. But yeah, so I completely agree with you. But I also do not want to be a test bunny at all. I value my health too much for that. I do sincerely, I am grateful for people that are trying their best to resolve this. I really do. And people that are doing their part, but people are seeking normalcy. And right now we can't consider what we're going through normal. We can't normalize it. Right. And I think so many people are normalizing it. I walked through, I had to go get some groceries tonight. And I was walking through and I saw this mask, and I'm like, I've never seen a mask like this in my life. I still have the blue ones from the hospital, but this one was like bejeweled to the nines. And I'm like, okay, these things are now becoming this huge fashion statement and part of people's normal lives. And I refuse to normalize this. I refuse. I want to go back to my normal. I want to go back to seeing the people I want to see when I want to see them. I want to, go take vacations in the world where I want to go take vacations in the world. But yes, we do have to get through this temporary, setback. But I think that we all need to be mindful of how we deal with it. To each their own, like you said. I am like you, that I will be a little bit more cautious on certain things and not on others. So yeah, that's my opinion on that. Anything else you want to add?
What did Robbie say? Yeah, but how will we know they actually are taking the real thing?
Yeah.
That's hilarious. I want to just go back briefly, and it really ties into who do we believe?
Yeah, who do we believe?
And
yourself.
Yeah, I think your intuition is your greatest ally. And we live in Canada, and I kind of want to go back quickly. And so I'm part of an investor group, and the Dr. Chris Martinson, has a news article, an economic article called Peak Prosperity. He's also a doctor of pathology. And when stuff started coming out of China, he was doing his own research analogy by collecting like factual data and saying some things that our leaders should be doing.
Yeah.
And so it was conflicting because the information I was getting from him and then to oppose to what our prime ministers and presidents were saying was the exact opposite. So in the beginning, it was kind of, okay, who do we really believe? And, maybe it's not going to be that bad. They said things are fine. Let's keep going about our lives. We don't need to shut down. Keep using the subways. Keep going about your life. Keep, go here, go there, right? Remember that? And then all of a sudden, there was a twist. It shifted. It changed it. It was bad. We had to shut down. Everybody's got a lockdown. You can't see this person. Don't wear a mask. Wear a mask. It's not proven that the mask works. And now all of a sudden, it proves that it does work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a fool. If some guy on YouTube had information that end up being right versus people who are in power of countries who get the highest of the highest advice from the top of the top in every field. And are you guys seriously trying to tell me you couldn't give that same advice?
Yeah.
And it's funny, I had a talk with my wife about this, but it's really hard to say because you got to put yourself in their shoes, right? Which is, they got to think about the economy and the implications and, the types of things that those would have an effect. And I totally agree with her 100%. But here's the point. They ended up doing that which they didn't want to do in the beginning out of fear.
Right.
So the whole question is, why did they end up doing it? Why didn't they do it right away? Because I can tell you, we wouldn't be in this situation.
Right.
And, there comes a point where I think if you want to create who to believe about should you take a vaccine, is accountability. It's coming on that screen and saying, you know what? We messed up.
Yeah.
I messed up. Whether the people got the wrong information and I fired them and I've hired new people that are now in tune with what's going on and they have different sources that they're getting it from. And collectively, here's where we're going, right? I know that they can't tell us everything because if they do, that's how you create panic in a society. Yeah. So they have to control what gets delivered to us so that society reacts in a mindful and meaningful way.
Yeah.
So I get those things.
Yeah.
But if you want to win the hearts of your society, start by being truthful, honest, vulnerable, and real. Yeah. That's what. So who to believe? I mean,
Yourself.
I always say, who do you believe? Well, don't believe what people say, believe what people do. And then these very people that are saying to not go here, don't do that, are then getting caught out with their friends without masks on, traveling by plane over to see their family in this part of the country, going like, that's the whole point. This is going on around the world.
Yeah.
And so, I think really what it comes down to is, who do we believe? Who do we need to hold accountable?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think those are the questions that I would like to also add. Who do we believe? Who do we need to hold accountable?
Right.
The people that are in charge of our economies, health, and lives.
Yeah.
That's what needs to happen. That is what needs to change. And that's how they can captivate and win the hearts of people like myself, and maybe you who are skeptical about what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's the whole point of, truths versus comforting lies, right? So don't be afraid to seek the truth. And the truth has to be something that makes sense, right? Something that makes sense of 1 + 1 = 2. Add up the proper scenarios, connect the dots for yourself, if not for yourself, for your family as well, right? So be very mindful and aware. Is there anything you want to add before we sign off, Sam?
I just think, here we are, we're in December, we're coming up to Christmas.
Yeah.
And, the landscape of, I think all our worlds have changed.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to share something with you. And this is something I constantly try to remind myself of, that Dr. Frankl reiterates in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. And for those of you who haven't read it, this is a gentleman who lived through the Holocaust, saw all his family and friends get decimated. And one key thing that always sticks with me, it's this quote that he came up with, is that choice is the last human freedom. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't necessarily matter what happens to you in your life, but rather the beliefs that you create. Mm-hmm. And so we're in some hard times, and I truly believe it's about to get a lot harder. Yeah. We're going to start to see the economic implications of what's going on. Yeah. And, here's a couple things I want to run by. One, I think after Biden gets admitted into the presidency, if that ends up happening, that you could possibly see the coronavirus disappear. Mm. And cases will go down, and he'll look like a hero, and yada, yada, yada. Okay. The flip side is, Trump stays in power, or Biden comes in, and things still keep going like they're going, where things are getting better. And because what we have to all understand is that you have to create your own plan with the information that's being given to you. Back in the beginning, when I was getting the information from Dr. Chris Martinson, I already pre-planned what I was going to do, even though we were getting different information from mainstream media. I was out and I stocked up my shelves. I got cash ready. I got all sorts of things ready. And then when shit hit the fan, like it did, when everyone was lining up outside the grocery stores, in the banks, and panicking, and I've said this before, we're going for walks. We were doing all sorts of things that others who, take heed at mainstream media and the people that are in power, thinking, they are the people that are going to tell me what I'm going to do, then that creates a different outcome. And so what I'm going to challenge you to do, and I challenge myself to do, is kind of take a crystal ball and collect all the data and information that's going on today and see, what does life look like in a month, 3 months, 6 months, or a year from now? Yeah. Here in Canada, there's no talk of when we're getting the vaccine. Mm-hmm. Right? It could be 2021, spring, summer, fall. Mm-hmm. Well, if we're already locked down now, what does that look like 6 months from now?
Right.
So you have to plan for these things. Don't wait for the next time your local mayor or MP or president or prime minister comes on the TV. Start planning yourself. Be defensive. And then when you move forward in your life, you can be offensive if you need to fall back onto your plan. So those are some key things that I would do. There's no crystal ball to this. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of a lack of clarity and everything. So my best advice to you is to collect the data, have a good conversation with your partner, and say, if this lasts another year, mm-hmm. what are things we can do today so that our life will be less impacted in a negative way.
Yeah.
And what does this mean to us? How will we grow from this? How will this impact our lives in a positive way?
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of people are having to go back to the basics. Let's face it, you're not out with your friends and your family socializing, going to bars and clubs and traveling. You're at the core of it, you know, fundamentally with your spouse and your partner almost all the time, and your kids. So maybe make that the focus, because let's face it, you know, Tony Robbins always says, if you're not happy in your relationship, you're not happy, period. And it will have negative implications in other areas of your life. So that's what I want to leave you with. Take a crystal ball, see where things are going to be a year from now based on the data that we have today and what they're saying wherever you live in the world, and make a defensive plan.
Right.
So that you'll be less impacted. And if you're one of those people where you haven't been divorced yet, but you're on the verge, or you're having a lot of problems, and it's going to affect us all, you guys, sit down, have the hard conversations, and get back to the basics.
Be proactive, right? It's all about being proactive, foreseeing maybe where there's some weaknesses that lie within your relationship or in your life right now, and be proactive, right? So on that note, this is the relationship series, always talking about the matters of the heart and mind. Don't forget to go to our channel, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Ciao for now, everybody.